Hey everybody, it's Alexander Dahl with Manifest Vitality once again. So I got another interview that's ready to go. So we'll go ahead and just jump straight into that one. I don't got too much else at the moment. So here you go. All right, bye. All right, so I'm currently on the phone with Ken. He's another one of the musicians that reached out about the interview series going on. So I'm going to go ahead and give him the opportunity to introduce himself.
Hi, everybody. My name is Ken Macy, and I'm an independent musician that lives in Florida. And I've been playing music for around 15 years professionally. And pretty much ever since I was 13 years old, I've been playing music, and I absolutely love it.
Excellent. So you mentioned there that you started playing music when you were 13, but how old were you when you first identified with music and it really struck to you? And what was it about music that really kind of attached to you?
I think it was just growing up listening to the radio and different records and things like that. When I was a kid, I actually started playing hockey, and then I got out of it to play music. So, as far as that goes, I think I was always just drawn to beats and rhythms and things like that that got me moving, especially getting pumped up for hockey games. So, kind of a funny story. I used to listen to Thunderstruck by AC/DC to get pumped up, in the warm up before the hockey game. And then I would go out and score like two or three goals. So I think at that point, I just sort of identified to the rhythms and the beats and the music. And then I stopped growing and kids got bigger than I did. So I was like, okay, I don't really want to get any more injuries or anything like that. So I started playing music around 13, and I just fell in love with the process of playing and recording and um, just experimenting with sound. Just being a 13-year-old in his room with guitar amps and just making all sorts of noise. And it ended up just turning into something I did professionally later on in life, and I've grown to love ever since.
Sure. So when you did start actually learning an instrument, how long would you say it took you before you started learning to the time when you felt comfortable actually writing with the instrument?
I would say, well, it was actually kind of interesting the way that process happened. It was probably within 5 years, I would say. And within that 5 years, I did a lot of session gigs. So I played everything that I possibly could on guitar, whether it be 80s music, rock and roll, funk and reggae stuff. I just dove right into it, and I played with as many people as I could in different projects. And it wasn't until I was in an 80s band that I was talking to a drummer that was in the band. And he said, "Do you ever write your own stuff?" And I never did because I never tried it. So I just said I always did session gigs because that's where I thought I would be. And just sparking that curiosity between the two of us, we started talking about our influences. Like he loved the band, and more roots rock type of stuff. I was into blues rock type of things, and eventually the band dissolved, and we started, just talking about different sounds and things. And I started working on writing after that because I figured, well, I don't have a band I'm in, and I have all this time, so I figured why not give it a shot. And then from there, it just was trial by fire, and I think it's a good way to start. Just to write as many songs as you can, whether they're good or bad, it's okay. And
Mhm.
it's more about getting into the process of writing, similar to practicing, just playing and running over chords and things like that.
Sure. So, would you say kind of one of the differences between just doing session work and then also writing your own stuff is actually coming up with like the progressions and the arrangements uniquely rather than kind of just filling into to a template that may already be in front of you?
Yeah, I think it's important to start with things that you know, because it does give you the template to be able to write, so you can understand, things like music theory, and see how it's all put together and how it all works. And that is important on the early part of it when you're learning cover songs. Going from there, that's when you start to develop your own sounds based on your likes, and then that morphs into, like you were talking about, the structure in your own way of doing things with writing. And then that's where you really start to experiment and find your sound. And I think that takes some time, but it's a fun process too, because with music, there's rules and there aren't rules as far as that goes with writing. But
Hmm.
rules in the sense of like you need to be on the key and that sort of thing. But
Hmm.
um, as far as what you're trying to create, there aren't any rules for that. So I think just by experimenting and trying and recording, that's really a good place to start. Whether you have a riff down, like an idea on guitar, whether you have a melody that you can't get out of your head and record. And all the people that I looked up to writing would approach it that same way, where they would just go in and have an idea and go, "Oh, I got to get that down," and they would record just a little snippet of it.
Hmm.
And Bruce Springsteen had a great quote that I had heard over the years saying that you could always come back to a song, but you can't come back to life. And I thought that was, a very poetic way of putting it. And it's true. You can record an idea and get it down, and then come back to it. And I think that's a good starting point to writing songs.
Hmm. So kind of in tandem with that question, you mentioned that while you were learning to play guitar, you played pretty much anything you possibly could. How do you feel that sort of breadth of content that you used to learn guitar impacted the way that you make music now?
I think by trying different things, you figure out what works for you and what doesn't. And that's very important early on in the development part of it. I realized there was a lot of stuff that I wasn't good at, particularly Dave Matthews and um, classical guitar, to be precise.
Hmm.
I love classical guitar music, but I just don't have the hands or the ear for it. But that's where blues and country and uh, kind of funk rock, that type of genre, fell in. And that was the stuff that I would just repeatedly play, like bands like the Black Crowes and Tom Petty and CCR and 90s stuff. I love a bunch of 90s stuff too. But then I would fall into BB King, Aretha Franklin, James Brown for funk, love that stuff, Bob Marley.
Hmm.
And I just tried it. And I didn't want to give myself any limits with that, because then I wouldn't know what I would or wouldn't be good at. And then just trial by fire and process of elimination, I figured out, okay, this is what I'm good at. This isn't what I'm not good at this. So let me go towards the stuff that I'm good at and that I sound good playing, but also that I enjoy playing. And I think that's another big component to it, is that you have to like what you're doing. And if you don't like what you're doing, it shows up pretty quick, and people really will catch on to it quite quickly. So
So how do you feel that where you are now is a good point to kind of launch into the future? You mentioned prior to recording that you were supposed to be playing a show. That's a bit tricky these days. Do you kind of see yourself wanting to get out there and do more solo shows, or would you like to put together a full band lineup? How do you envision your band going forward?
So I've been, for the majority of my career, I've been a solo acoustic act, but I have put bands together based on certain gigs or opportunities that come up. So I put that together when it's appropriate to do so. I have been touring uh, now in Florida since I've been moved down here the last couple of weeks. I did a quick tour of, I should back up. I did a quick tour of New England, where I was from, where I grew up playing. I did that back in July to support my new EP, Campfire Songs, which I just released. So I did a tour up there, and then I moved down here, and then I've been kind of going from there. So, so I'm sorry. I'm sorry. What was the other part of that question? I lost my train of thought.
Where would you like to be able to see yourself get to in 5-10 years? Where would you like to see your career develop into?
Oh, okay. I'd like to start, opening for national acts, maybe going on more of a national level. Um, do that sort of thing. Continue to better my craft as a songwriter. I love writing songs. Also, just being a better performer. And I think, the biggest thing is being able to set up small, attainable goals, and then, working your way outwards. And that's a great thing for when you start playing too. I had read an article about Joe Satriani, who mentioned that when you start with shorter transitions of things, whether it be guitar parts or just any sort of goal setting, start there and then work your way out. And it's a really good school of thought, and especially for booking gigs too, because given the climate that we're in right now, that's sort of how I'm looking at it short term. Um, and then, I hope long term it can morph into something bigger.
Excellent. So what are some like really prominent memories that you have surrounding music, whether it be an inspirational show you went to, or something that happened to you while you're playing a show? What has happened to you?
I'll start with the first part of that question and then I'll go to the second part of the question. So, as far as shows that I've seen, when I was young, like I said, I dove into records. I just loved listening to music. So, when I started seeing live music, I really got to see how it's all done, how it's put together, how these people do it. And that's really inspiring for anybody on any level. It still is now. Like I still love watching videos and seeing people live now of just doing amazing things. And I think it started probably in the late 90s, I would say. It was when I first started going to shows. And there was one show in particular. It was the Black Crowes, and it was Lenny Kravitz. They were sharing a bill. And the Black Crowes were so good. I actually went with 8 people. And this has never happened since. But we all looked at each other and said, "Do you want to go do something else? Because we got our money's worth." It was such a good show, which is weird. And we were all in agreement. We're like, yeah, we could probably leave now. But I said, well, let's stick around for Kravitz. If he's not good, we'll leave after a couple of songs. And I'm so glad we stayed because Lenny came out and just tore it up. So we went from like a rock and roll band to like a funk soul band, and he just did such a great job. But I thought, like, wow, what a cool experience, like to be able to go and get your money's worth from something like that.
Hmm.
So it was cool to see two different acts do two different things, but still put on just an amazing result. And that's something I just kind of carry over. That I hadn't seen anything like that since, and I thought, wow, how cool is that? That these two different acts are on this bill, and they just went out and just gave it everything they had, and I'm so glad we stayed. It was a really cool experience for that. Um, and then from there, it was just a matter of just seeing other different acts that I would catch that I would just be inspired by, as far as their sound and what they do. Chris Isaac does some surf rock stuff. Always, always liked his stuff, and when I saw him live, it gave me a whole new appreciation for that type of music. And then I would go and see, a bunch of hard rock acts too. Like when I was a kid, I was into Ozzy and AC/DC. That floored me at that particular time. And then, years later, I would see different country acts come and go that I would like too. I never got to see Chris Stapleton, but I've seen him on performances on videos, and he's amazing. So that's kind of the cool thing with live music, and with uh, just music in general, and being able to appreciate music on that end,
Hmm.
is that you can never stop growing from that, and you can never stop liking things. And that's the great thing. As time goes on, your taste changes, and sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes you hold on to the things. Like I still love the Black Rose from when I was a kid. um, so there's that whole thing. um, and then to go to the second part of your question, where you were talking about playing an influence. To me, it's going out there and just having people connect with you, as far as the performing side of that. And that's the one thing that I never get sick of. And that's always fresh, it's always exciting, it's always new, and it's always great when you connect with people on a live setting. So every time I go out, I'm always thankful and thrilled that people connect to what I do. Most recently, I was playing a show on the beach, at Bradenton Beach, Florida, at Wicked Cantina, and I had somebody that came to see me because they had overheard me on the beach. They were going to go home, and they decided to come, stay, have a drink, and listen to me. And they were from Alaska, which was kind of cool.
Yeah, that's
Um,
very cool.
so we ended up just talking about it, and and I appreciated them for doing that. They could have easily gotten in their car and gone home, but something drew them to come see me and to just give me their time. And I thought, like, what a powerful thing music is. It's just I'm still flabbergasted by it.
Hmm.
Um, it's a pretty amazing thing that we all can connect with, and and that's why I keep doing it, and that's why I love it so much. Is that without having that connection, I wouldn't be talking to you now. I
Hmm.
wouldn't be doing the things that I've done. I wouldn't have met a bunch of other great people that I wouldn't have met otherwise if it wasn't for music. And I think that's why music is so important, because I think it bridges that gap between the known and the unknown, and you you just connect on a level that is far more cosmic. And it is a really incredible thing when it all happens. It keeps everything going.
Definitely. Um, on that note, where can people check you out? What's some of your social media out there where people can click on your links?
Sure. Would you like the handles too, or just the names?
Uh, the handles will work. Any way people can find you.
Sure. So my handle is at Ken Macy Music, KenMacyMusic. It's all one word. You can find me on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. My website, you can find a lot my new EPs on there too, Campfire Songs. You can find that on my .com website, which is kenmacymusic.com, and you can listen to all my new songs up on there too. And then I also have music available on Amazon, Pandora, iTunes, YouTube, and Spotify.
Excellent. And I always like to give the person I'm interviewing the opportunity to put out their last word. So just a message that you kind of feel resonates with you.
With me or with people in general? Like, what do you mean? Like, as far as like,
Just something, a general life lesson that you kind of feel strongly about. Doesn't have to necessarily be that. It could be something more on the
okay.
shallow aspect of things. It's completely up to you.
Honestly, if for just music and things in general, just play. If you're an inspiring musician that wants to get out there and start it, just do it. Just start playing, and the rest of it will come. And that's a lesson that I learned early and then later on in my career, which it's kind of weird because you don't think you'd come back to that, um, but it really did. It does hold up, and it holds true. I mean, just play and play what you feel and what you love. I think that's the biggest thing: is play what you feel and play what you love, because everything else will literally fall into place.